I am so excited about today's episode of The Next Decision. Today, Jarie Bolander, our executive strategist and general manager, is going to be talking to one of our favorite clients, Altrata. Rob Piane is the head of product at Altrata, and he's going to be talking about the missing lever of product marketing and how it really affects organizational growth. They're going to dive into the issue of sales, marketing, and product alignment and talk about how you can optimize the entire organization for performance. Let's jump in and see what Rob and Jarie have to say.
Hey everyone, my name is Jarie Bolander, and welcome to the Next Decision podcast, where we talk about all things B2B sales, marketing, go-to-market, all that fun stuff. I'm here today with Rob Piane, who is the Chief Product Officer over at Altrata. I got it right! Thanks for being here, Rob.
Super happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Jarie.
Yeah, it only took me 20 takes to get your name right, but that's okay. Before we get started and talk about the topic today, which is going to be product and marketing alignment, which is a huge, huge challenge, I know, for lots of people. Why don't you just, give us a quick background of, what you're doing and where you're from?
Yeah. So a little background on myself. Been in B2B SaaS for about 20 years. Well, it makes it sound longer when I say it out loud. Had the fortune of being part of teams in a number of different industries, from financial services to retail and pharma, across a lot of different teams as well. Have some experience in product and program management, certainly, but also areas like quality assurance and client services and support. So I haven't done a little bit of everything, but I've done a little bit of a lot of things, I guess you could say.
That's always good, yeah. Have you been in B2B SaaS for a couple of decades? I'm sure you've seen a lot of challenges and struggles, right? I mean, we all have. You're in this business long enough, you sort of see all the little cracks that need to be kind of smoothed over or aligned. So the topic today is about alignment between, product and marketing. And I'm just curious if you have any, general overarching philosophies about how you work with marketing to get that great product that gets marketed fantastically so that sales can sell it.
Yeah, you're right. It's probably been something I feel like I've been talking about for 20 years, but I don't know that we ever get it anywhere close to perfect. I think there's we hear a lot of buzz with companies talking about being customer centric or customer obsessed or customer driven, pick your flavor. But the devil really, I think, is in the details at the end of the day in terms of how we actually do that. Our customers have no shortage of opinions and usually pretty quick to jump to solutions to solve their own problems. And they just kind of come to you and say, here, go solve this. But I think being customer driven, and this pertains certainly to both product and marketing teams, and the business in general, is really about putting successful customer outcomes at the center of the product and marketing strategy. So it doesn't mean just listening to what they tell us to do probably every day, but it's our job to fully understand their problems and the market opportunities, ideally even better than they do, right? So that we can bring the best solutions to market. And that's what I think being customer driven is really all about.
Yeah, interesting. So do you also then loop in like customer success as part of that discovery?
Yeah. I think an interesting thing happens when different teams talk to customers. You might have customer success or client success talking to customers. Marketing might get insight from customers. Product might get insight from customers, and we all kind of hear things a little bit differently, right? And so it's important that we all have a line of sight to that information, and that we allow ourselves to interpret it differently and kind of take the best of all of it.
Yeah, that whole, I just wrote down the many voices that sort of kind of come in, and of course, every department's got its own, cross to bear, right? It's got its own thing
Right.
it needs to do and optimize for. And I'm just curious if is there a framework that you use or something that you've learned over the years, or if something you've stolen or whatever, maybe not stolen, maybe borrowed, but, with asking about how that works together. Because, and the reason I bring this up is, here at Decision Counsel, we work with a ton of different companies. And one of the things that we find is that there's always friction at the interface and then handoff. It's always, for whatever reason, from one group to the next group, that interface friction is, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it just seems like there's always like something always gets missed. And I'm just curious, like any framework that you've used to sort of make sure stuff doesn't get missed?
In terms of just collecting customer feedback or more in general about alignment of the teams?
Actually, that's a good point. Why don't we start with just aligning the teams first, and then specifically, if you do have something about customer feedback,
Yeah.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I think in terms of, the alignment of product and marketing teams in general, I would say, there's probably a top-down answer and maybe a bottom-up answer. And I think about, strategic alignment across the teams as being super important. In any given day, teams are super busy writing user stories or tear sheets, doing all the day to day. And so we have a lot of motion, but we don't always necessarily have the progress we want. And I think that can happen when we have a lack of alignment at the strategic level about what teams are focused on. Right. So, particularly as you mentioned, the interface point, right? You're talking about two teams that interface a lot, and that interface has to work really well for a company to be successful. So alignment at the top strategically is super important. And then maybe more of a bottom up sort of version of this is, in that day to day, people are working together constantly. When we have what I would say is like a lack of integrated processes, it could lead to overlapping responsibilities, finger pointing, gaps in ownership, you name it. It's kind of that friction that lives at the bottom in the day to day, right? And so it's a common issue with any two teams that work together. But unless you've got a really high functioning autonomous team, they're going to need some sort of process support to operate efficiently. So yeah, two views, I would say. One is ensure we have some strategic alignment at the top, but also some good foundational processes at the bottom.
Interesting. And how would that apply to like customer support and customer service? Like,
Yeah, so a good, to your point about feedback, that's a good kind of operational on-ramp to product and marketing, right? Is you're talking about an organization that's dealing with customers all day long, and
yeah.
Any little bit of information that product and marketing teams can get about customers is always gold. So you need some good process to collect that sort of data at scale, right? So it might be ways that you roll up interactions that your customer success team has with customers so that you can see what issues and challenges are happening at scale. But sometimes, it's good old fashioned person-to-person conversation, right? Building those relationships across the teams and making sure that the client success teams know the types of information that gets product and marketing teams excited because they're looking for it. And usually when you have that sort of alignment on kind of what's important, you find that the phone rings or the Teams rings or the conference software of choice. We don't really use the phones anymore as much.
Yeah, not
It
anymore.
starts to happen, right?
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I love the whole tops down, bottoms up framework because, strategy is meant to align the teams. Without good strategy, there's no alignment. Without alignment, there's no execution. At least that's the way I see it. And I like the whole idea of the bottoms up approach to really like what are the processes that are going to help us collaborate. And I don't think you mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you mean like the teams or the tools or whatever, but the integrated flow of how we build and deliver products to market. That, I mean, maybe this is just me, and I love your thoughts though. I think over the last 20 years, since software has become quote unquote easy to create, and also, in my opinion, agile completely eliminated the product marketing department or the product marketing manager, the people that made the product requirements document, right? So basically, I think software made us lazy. Okay, maybe controversial. Amongst other things, right? So I'm just curious, like, there is a muscle that I don't think has been activated or worked on, even on the marketing side, this product marketing role like doesn't exist very much. So I'm just curious, how does product push into marketing so that they define the right things for the customers, right? Without being like, hey, that's not your job kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it gets me thinking about like where these two functions fail often at kind of working together, right? I like to think of these sorts of organizational things. You use the term push in, right? And I think thinking of this as like a system of inputs and outputs is kind of how I personally tend to think about these sorts of things, right? Product and marketing, we're all in the business of retaining customers and growing the business, right? So we all have the top kind of macro goals aligned, but a good product team relies on inputs from marketing to be successful, and vice versa. The marketing teams help us paint a picture of the world that exists outside of our four walls, right? Our customers' unmet needs, our competitive landscape, how our value proposition and products resonate in the market. And if you're a product leader listening to this, you should be asking yourself, how good of a job can you actually do in your work without those inputs, right? So there's a reliance on the work that our peers in marketing are doing. And when there's a misalignment there and we are not doing good product work with those inputs, chances are we miss on things like product market fit. We develop products and capabilities that the real world has no use for, which of course, doesn't really help your growth plan much.
No.
And
He told us to build it. I don't know.
yeah, that's right. Right. The fingers start going.
Yeah.
But conversely, the same is true, right? So product sits at the center of solving customer problems and how we solve for them to deliver successful customer outcomes. That really sits at the core of the messaging that our marketing teams deliver, and the value proposition that we bring to bear. So, if you're a marketer, you're listening to this, I would say, how do you as a marketer do your job effectively if you're not taking a proper diagnosis of a customer problem as an input from your product peers, right? So these are, I would say, really like the nuts and bolts of the most important things that tools and processes and frameworks and methodologies almost don't matter in this. This is like, if we're not doing this, we're really not doing anything.
Yeah, it's fundamental. I
Yeah.
think it's very much fundamental. And I remember, I came up during the semiconductor boom when we were building the internets, as they called it, and the role of marketing was to define the product. If marketing didn't define it, we didn't build it. And if we built it and it didn't sell, it was because marketing didn't define it correctly. And nowadays, I just don't think that happens, to be honest. I think it's more, especially in software, and again, I'm bashing on software because they're fun to bash on. It's fundamentally, are we building the right thing to solve a problem for a customer?
Yep.
And in a vacuum, as you pointed out, in a silo, in a vacuum, you're never going to do that. How do we get marketing and product to push a little bit into each other? Not in a intrusive way, obviously, but I think we need to build this product marketing muscle back up. And there's the Product Marketing Institute, and you can take classes, but this is like when the rubber meets the road, right? Product and marketing, they got to be in sync and aligned, or this stuff is not going to go well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm a little bit of a purist about this, but good old-fashioned shared goals, can go a long way and can be really powerful. I can tell you personally, as a leader in the organizations that I've worked in, we have always made it a priority to have shared goals, right? Especially when what you're trying to do is improve collaboration. If you're going through a phase where you're saying to yourself, as an organization, I need these two teams to collaborate better together. Well, what's better than giving them the same goal, and they either win or fail together, right? So I'd encourage anyone listening, if that's what you're after, identify some really great strategic goals for your marketing and product teams to share, and kind of empower them to go accomplish those together.
Yeah, I mean, I think the same thing is true with sales and marketing goals too. I've seen that misalignment as well, because I always say marketing's end customer is sales, which people are like, how can I said, we all work for sales,
I've used that.
right? Right. And you're
Yeah,
like, oh, what do you mean? I said, well, if we don't have any sales, we don't have a job,
that's
right? You're
right.
like, oh yeah, haha. So obviously we all have that aligned goal. But it wow, yeah. I mean, this idea of shared goals, like what would be, how would you define some of those shared goals? Like how could we, like, let's just say, fictitiously, so you're in product, I'm in marketing,
Yeah.
we're not getting along, although of course we're going to get along, but we're not getting, we're this hypothetical, everyone, we like each other, don't worry. What are some of the shared goals that we're going to need to collaborate so that we can really suck in on alignment? How would you define that?
Yeah, I think it starts. Look, while you want the teams to collaborate, you also want to accomplish business objectives, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I would think about when we're talking about shared goals and business objectives is starting with those business objectives to define the goals, right? So it's not enough for us to just collaborate better together. It's got to drive some growth or drive some retention or do something that really helps the books at the end of the day. So it could be something like, okay, if we want to grow our business in a particular geography or in a particular sub industry, right? We set a goal of accomplishing that business outcome. Now we each have a shared responsibility in that, right? Marketing team maybe is going to help define the needs of the market and understand what sub industries of the sub industries are the real opportunities, right? Product team's got to figure out, okay, well, if it's a sub industry that we've already got some coverage in, what are the key capabilities that maybe we're missing from, the saturation and penetration that we're after? So at the end of the day, if we don't define and build the product, well, we're not going to, accomplish that business outcome. And if we don't properly define the market, well, we certainly won't build, the right product either. So it's a good, quick way to win or fail together. So I think it's really putting something, when we say shared goals, like giving ourselves something measurable, something quantifiable, and something that's business oriented.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. Because I think on the marketing side, like if, again, hypothetically, if we're, at the same company doing this, I would say, what I need from product is a realistic time frame to get whatever we're going to develop, because there are things that are upstream and downstream that we have to plan for. A lot of times in an agile environment, again, bash on software guys, it's like, every 6 weeks is a release. Hey, it's done. Yay. And you're like, what, I don't, how the hell am I supposed to, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So I think from our end, it would be, here's the roadmap, and again, it doesn't have to be perfectly aligned with the timing, but like, here's the roadmap. This is what we have to get done, because there's stuff that happens before release, obviously. I love what you said about like understanding the market and really like figuring out, hey, this is the vertical, this is the region, this is the customer set. Because a lot of times I feel marketing doesn't do their homework, and that puts product in a bad spot. Because if let's say you're in a vertical, I don't know, like whatever vertical is, say you're in a vertical and there are specific things that vertical needs. There's like wants and needs, like the requirement is XYZ. Let's say it's GDPR for just a crazy thing. And you don't communicate that to product, and they build something that's not GDPR compliant, and you're wondering why no one buys it. And you're like, that's on marketing. Of course, it's a collaborative thing, but I think marketing owns the market, quote unquote. I think it also should drive like, hey, this is what we think customers need. And then the thing that I think lacks sometimes is they don't close the loop. So I would love your thoughts on this, because this is something, again, I find a lot. Hey, marketing defines something, product build it, we go to market, things are happening, but sometimes we just don't close the loop and like, okay, what worked, what didn't work.
Yeah.
I'm curious, have you been at places where they've done that, or how was the best way to do that?
Yeah, yeah. I think you're touching on an important part of this, which is, there's a hypothesis somewhere built in there, and there's some discovery that needs to happen, and then there's some validation that needs to happen, right? So, if we think we have this opportunity and we think GDPR is a requirement, right? Well, what are we doing to validate that before we go off and try and build something, right? So let's go through the discovery process. Let's make sure that what we want to build will actually solve our customers' problems before we actually start writing code. And look, sometimes I think what happens is you have a really good idea, you expect that it's going to solve a problem, and while it might help, it may not completely solve the problem or capture the market opportunity that you're after. And so that's where I think the feedback loop, Jarie, that you're talking about comes back in, which is some measurement, right? I know that OKRs have a long history, and they can be for some people they can be polarizing. Everybody's got their own kind of good and bad experiences, but I don't think anyone would argue with the idea of measurement, right? We need to do something, measure its outcomes, see if we've accomplished our goal, and if we haven't, then we either go back to the drawing board or we move on.
Yeah, and usually that's mostly a marketing thing that they don't like goals, OKRs. This is so fuzzy. But the way I think of it, and it's probably because I have an engineering background, so that's probably the reason why I have this disposition. But I always think of it as an experiment, so I have to have an hypothesis and I have to have data to back the experiment up. Basically, in my opinion, marketing is just a series of experiments to kind of stumble your way to figure out really what to do. Because I think and correct me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of product people don't understand the complexity of marketing, in that it is not an exact science like engineering. It's just not. It's so much noise and so much. It's creative. It's this.
So you hit it right there,
right? It's this whole
right.
It's like this soup, this milieu of just like, and people are like, it's what reason why marketers are a little nutty, drink too much espresso, and occasionally have too many glasses of wine. Well, not me. I don't drink anymore. But I can, there is definitely a tension between development. I mean, you're not bending space and time, unless you're really bending space and time. Like, it's deterministic. It's just going to take time. You could pretty much build anything, full stop. I think on the marketing side, it's a fuzzy thing. And
it's more art and less science.
It's more art and less science. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering from a backwards and forwards education piece, because I know that because I used to do what you do, build stuff. Now I just market stuff. So, I went to the dark side. But what are some things that marketers need to know about product in order to have them have a better relationship, one, and then two, I'll do the same thing that product needs to know about marketing?
Yeah, this we probably could, dedicate key episodes just to this topic.
I know.
Yeah, I think one of the areas where I think these teams really need to be on the same page is in the area of, and it's less about what marketing needs to know about product as a function and vice versa. But I think a lot, what you said made me think for some reason a lot about our competitive differentiators, right? And the space in which we play in, right? Because as a product team, you need to know where your strengths and weaknesses are of your product. And your marketing team can help you with that immensely. At the same time, I'm sure as anyone in marketing listening to this podcast would agree, knowing those competitive differentiators and where your product is good and not as good is very important to the way you talk about your solutions. So I think there needs to be some shared understanding of what those things are amongst the teams. It can be even trickier because we're talking about something that's very dynamic, right? We're releasing product regularly, and so what we're good at and not as good at is changing. Our competitors are doing the same. So it really requires a good alignment between the teams to make sure that they're constantly reassessing, hey, how does our solution kind of stand up against our competitors? Where have we made some progress? Where have we not made some progress? Because I think each team has their own really selfish but very important need for having that information.
Oh, totally. Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah, and I think what product people should know about marketing is that it's clearly not an exact science.
Yeah.
So if you want 100% certainty, don't come to us because there's like, and if we're batting 500, we're doing really fantastically awesome, in my opinion. That is not, my opinions are my own on this. I'm sure people will debate on that, but I always think of it as marketing is a probabilistic view of a solution set in a landscape where we're trying to figure out the dynamics of product market fit, go to market, like messaging, getting above the noise. It's a non-exact science. I think you put it best. It's more art than science. There's science behind it, but it's more art than science. I also think the other thing that product should know is, I mean, it's an incredibly stressful situation when like we're gonna go to market with something and it's not ready. If it's not ready and there's problems with it, we just need to know about that sooner rather than later. Like we could always work around stuff. I think that's the one thing, it's just, you're just a PowerPoint update away from perfection. I mean, really, it's like, it's just words on a page,
Yeah.
whatever. And I mean, that's the same thing that when we talk with sales, right? Because there's always a sales alignment too. There's always sometimes a challenge, obviously, with sales too, because, for marketing, they're our ultimate end customer. And usually sales will complain to us, then we complain to product or vice versa. Like, we can't sell this thing. It doesn't work. Wow. And there's an ecosystem where we all have to like play nice together. But I do, yeah, interesting. This is so I think it's just this constant thing, like, I don't think it ever ends. I mean, is there ever
Both,
Oh, we won't have a job, right? Oh, the other thing. Oh, this is the other thing that the product should know. I forgot about this. There's something called the elephant curve. Have you heard of the elephant curve?
I have not.
Okay,
Tell me about it.
the elephant curve. So you've heard of an S curve, right?
Yeah.
You know what the S curve is, right? So the elephant curve is a modification of the S curve, and it has to do with marketing campaigns and marketing messaging. All marketing, again, my opinion, I don't have a ton of concrete data on this, but generally this is the way the world works. You know how things like start off slow, then they accelerate through the S curve, and then they plateau, and that's usually adoption. And in a technology sense, that's just like maturity. The elephant curve, what happens is it starts to decline on the other end. So you have these elephant curves that are constantly being created and marketing, and I call it the marketing elephant curve, because there will be a point where your marketing campaign will just not be effective anymore. And no one knows why. It could be who knows, but eventually it will not work. And our job as marketers is to just ride the elephant curves. We need to stack elephant. So you'll be like, product will be like, why are you changing this? It's like, I'm stacking elephant curves, bro. I need to do this. My job is this. It's going like this. So I think, when product looks at marketing, they're a bunch of schizophrenic nutsoid, raccoons on crack trying to figure stuff out. We're chasing elephant curves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you said something, I think we're talking just about maybe how the different roles are wired a little bit differently, and that's what makes them different and great. Maybe that's part of it, right? I definitely have been in some conversations where someone in marketing is or someone in product is asking like continuous questions, like why this, why that, why are they doing that, why are they doing this? And I think, because the marketing brain is a little more creative, right? They're maybe a little more comfortable in the gray and they know how to tell a story. And whereas the product folks, with a brain that's maybe a little closer to technology, are a little more black and white, a little more ones and zeros.
You can say on the spectrum, because I am on the spectrum.
So yeah, it's and vice versa, right?
Yeah,
To your point, a product person, a marketing person is going to come back and maybe interview a product person about a particular capability like 3 times, and the product person is going to say like, "Didn't we already talk about this?" And they're going to say, I'm trying to, kick off another elephant curve, right?" So
exactly.
yeah,
No, actually, really good point. Because I didn't think of that. We've got product people that tend to be logical, systematic, engineer mindset. I think that's valid. Marketers are more creative, artistic mindset. There's some that are data driven, and those are the best ones. And the conflict, I do think, comes from the creative and the engineer, the creative and the scientist. We'll just say the merge, like when they bash together, like sparks, right? And I like the way you put that, because I think if we just realize that about each other, and I've realized that because I'm a recovering engineer, so I am on the spectrum for sure. So I do understand, believe me. I understand, like the best one is like, and this would piss me off when I was an engineer. Marketer would be like, "Can't you just do this feature? It seems easy." And you're like, that sentence is going to take me 6 months, right?
right.
You've been in those meetings where you're like, well, competitors, and you're like, do you understand how hard that is?
Yeah, there's no doubt there's not enough appreciation, right?
Yeah, both.
The same thing happens, right? It's like, we need to develop hero messaging, and then we're going to go to step B, and then we're going to go to plan 12, and the product person is just like, well, we already built it. We did the hard work. Like, this should be easy, right? But I think this mashing of archetypes, right? This probably contributes to some of the what we were talking about earlier, which is the misalignment down at the low processes of how we get work done, right? Who's responsible for what? There's probably plenty of things where we're thinking, oh, that's quasi creative, so that's marketing's thing, and vice versa, right? On the other side. So I would just say, like, maybe teams need to be less afraid about talking about that type of stuff. Like, if we're really collaborating, if it's not our responsibility and we don't know who owns it, let's speak up. Let's say, hey,
Yeah. Who's got, or I think the other one would be really cool is like, okay, we could be like, dumb question time. Hashtag. Okay, any question in here? Don't
Safe
judge
space.
me. Yeah, don't judge me. We're in the cone of the dumb question time. Don't judge me because and maybe there is a fear. I do think there's sometimes a fear between two of them, right? Like, because they're just can be so different. They're so, God, but like, oh man, yeah, the engineer, scientist brain, the creative brain, and when they come together and it blend, like when both those forces merge into this beautiful thing, you're unstoppable. Just unstoppable, right? Because product is building something that the market wants, and marketing can market it so that sales, it's like easy. I just showed up and they gave me here. How much is it? Let me get my checkbook out here. How much? Yeah, no, here you go.
Yeah, I think it kind of starts and ends with the why, right?
Mhm.
Like, why we're building something, why we're going after this market, why we're in this business. I think
Mhm.
when teams are on the same page about that and are both convicted about it, from a vision standpoint, it not only empowers the teams individually, but gets kind of this joint empowerment, towards the same goal.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's this why. It kind of always comes down to the why. Like, why are we doing this? I mean, there's the bigger why, the internal why, and then there's the business. I think you put the business goal or the business outcome. Actually, I wrote down business outcome. How does the why align to the business outcome? If we're aligned that way, yeah, okay, developers at the cocktail party will be in the corner, texting on their phone. Well, the marketers will be up doing karaoke and God knows what else. Yes, we're different, introvert, extrovert. Although I'm a highly functional introvert, so this marketing thing, I get a little sweaty here. You know what I mean? So yeah. So last day. It's called the next decision for a reason. We're gonna put you on the spot. what's the next decision you need to make in order to align product and marketing, in your opinion? Or what's the next decision you're going to make to align your product and marketing teams?
Yeah, the next decision. We we got through most of, if not all of this episode, and we haven't yet talked about AI. So it'd be probably would be a failure on both of our parts to not talk about this. But
That's good.
look, it a lot of times it's kind of what comes up when these sorts of big questions. I think you're asking a pretty big question, right? When these big questions get asked, right? We're in the midst of this incredible, revolution in technology, right?
Right.
I think the advances that we've seen in AI in the last 6 months, 12 months, couple years,
Crazy.
have started to have a real impact on how people get work done, not just us, but particularly our customers, right? And so I would say, like, in the context of everything that we've been talking about, an important decision for product and marketing to answer together is, if our job is to anticipate the needs of our customers tomorrow, right? Because we want to be kind of a step ahead and understand what problems we can help solve for them tomorrow, because software doesn't get built in a day, usually. Given the impact that AI is having on the way they work, right? The way people work is kind of rapidly changing. The customers are finding ways to solve their own problems without us.
That's
So
good point.
how do we better anticipate the future needs of our customers, given the amount of change that AI is creating in the way they do their work? That is a super important one for us to answer, because we have to answer it faster than we used to have to answer this sort of question, because the effect that technology is having is profound at this stage, right?
Oh yeah, the scale, the scope, and the speed, it's mind-boggling. That is a lot of our clients. The next decision they have to make is, how is AI going to affect my business? And I like how you brought up, like, customers are solving their problems without us. That's okay. Like,
Yeah, that's right.
that's a little scary, right?
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about kind of talking regularly on the assumptions and our strengths and weaknesses and what our customers need us for and what their problems are. What's changing each time we have the conversation is some new evolution of product, of technology has happened that changes our customer's life. And now we have a new context in which we need to operate, a new set of problems to go solve. So if we're not constantly talking about it, right, if we're doing annual planning cycles, by the time we deliver something, like, that problem doesn't even exist anymore. So it requires us, we talked about agile from a development standpoint, but agility in a problem solving standpoint is equally, if not more important, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. Rob, it's been a great time talking with you. I really appreciate it.
That was
Really
great.
cool, man. Yeah, really cool. Good luck at Altrata. I know you guys are doing a lot of great stuff. And look forward to seeing how this next decision is going to manifest itself with your stuff. It's going to be
That's right.
cool.
That's right. Can't wait. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Looking forward to listening to the next couple episodes.